Hey everyone, welcome to Monday Mornings with Dr. Nick, Authentic Leadership in Action. I'm your host, Dr. Nick Davies, and I'm on a quest to learn as much as I can about leadership, specifically School of Leadership. Each week, I meet with leaders across the country and then summarize those meetings in short articles, videos, and a podcast. This right here is a short form podcast on leadership intended to give you tips and advice that you can use in your schools right away. I love the challenges that come with leadership, and I love talking with leaders about their journeys. I'll use everything I learned to continue my personal mission of having a positive impact on people's lives so they can become the best of which they're capable of becoming. So ready or not, here we go into this week's topic. All right, everyone, episode number 10, Let Your Work Speak for Yourself. We finally did it, got the first 10 episodes under our belt. Great stuff. And this time I met with Dr. Scott Seaman, the Executive Director of AWSP, the Association of Washington School Principals, which I am a proud member of. Dr. Seaman is a former teacher and principal and coach. He's done a little bit of everything throughout his career. Because I'm a member of AWSP and he is the executive director, at an event I recently was able to sit down and have lunch with him. And from there, we ended up setting up a time to talk about leadership, which is where this information came from. So he had some excellent perspectives that were actually different from some of the things I've been hearing from other leaders, which is why I love meeting with new people. A lot of them have such different perspectives, although not on everything, which I'll mention in a little bit. He has played a major part in the school leadership paradigm, which I've linked in an article and some notes, and I encourage you to check that out. School leadership paradigm. It's being used all across the country, and Dr. Seaman has played a major part in spreading it and creating it. So from our conversation, here are three main takeaways. Run, be careful of your ego, and let your work speak for itself. And lastly, creating hope for all. Let's dive into more detail about each of those three. So run. Yes, I mean run. Put on your shoes, get outside and run. I'm sure someone who just read a transcript of our conversation might have taken something different from this part of our conversation, but the old track coach in me just couldn't resist. Dr. Seaman talked about how running 30 miles a week was extremely beneficial and crucial to his success as a leader. Being a school principal is very hard. You are the only person in the school who can't have a bad day. When people need something, you're always the one that has to have a smile on your face, regardless of what's going on. You are the face of calm for your school. So early morning running, that has been kind of his release. It's his alone time and way for processing, writing speeches, emails, going over challenging conversations, things like that, spiritual time, just being present in the moment. And I certainly would agree with that. I'm an early morning cardio person. I don't run every day. I did get in 15 miles this week, but I also spent a few hours on the bike as well. But I certainly agree with that thought that having that time to yourself in the early morning is a great way to get centered and going for the day. Again, not to go too much down a rabbit hole, this is something I certainly am passionate about. That time when you're out running on the bike, doing some sort of cardio, Dr. Seaman never listened to anything, and I don't as well. And if you've heard of the ultra runner, the ultra athlete, David Goggins, he even says that listening to anything while you run, while you bike is cheating. You have to be there, be present as just be part of what you're doing, which Dr. Seaman has certainly embraced. Moving on, second main topic, be careful of your ego and let your work speak for itself. So when I asked Dr. Seaman about things he has learned over his career, he was quick to say, be careful of your ego. He became an assistant principal really early on in his career. He then got tapped to be a principal, not shortly after becoming an assistant principal. And he said, your ego can start to get in your way when you rack up successes, especially when you rack up some quick successes. And so you need to be careful of that. You don't have to be on the fast track to be the first or youngest principal or superintendent or whatever it is that your goal is. What you need is for your work to speak for itself. So it might take longer, but if your work speaks for itself and you're not just out there trying to be the first or the fastest, that's going to help you in the long run. On the same note, he talked about being open to new possibilities. So for him, he ended up creating this cadre, so to speak, of principals across the nation, a hodgepodge of people. Maybe they're kind of unofficial PLC, and they use that networking to support each other in their own leadership journeys, which I think is a great idea. Now, Dr. Seaman is not the first person who has told me something like this about being careful of your ego, not trying to be first. And so I'm starting to get that message from others, that the leadership journey is not a race. Going back to what Taj Jensen told me weeks ago, which was there is no end point as a leader, which also means then if you're trying to go the fastest, you still don't get anywhere because there is no end point. Moving on to our last main topic, creating hope for all. I took this phrase from the school leadership paradigm, but it was all about, when I asked Dr. Seaman what drives him, what gets him up in the morning, it was all around creating hope for others, which makes sense because he helped create school leadership paradigm. He talked about how kids and adults need to have hope, feel loved, a sense of belonging, and see themselves in the future. Those are 4 key areas. And he said for students, those 4 key areas, they start the moment they step on the bus in the morning, which means that your bus drivers have to be involved in this process as well. And then from there, it's throughout the day, throughout the rest of the day, it's anyone those kids come in contact with, they need to be all about making sure kids have hope, feel loved, sense of belonging, and that they see themselves in the future. He also talked about how kids, when they're in the building, they need a positive environment and a principal who loves and cares for them. In his current role, he doesn't have the same daily impact that he used to when he was a coach and a teacher. You don't get that same one-on-one time with the kids, but he's still having an impact through his work across the country with the school leadership paradigm. And then lastly, this is kind of an aside. It didn't necessarily fit into one of these categories, but Dr. Seaman encouraged me to journal, essentially write down what happens in my day in the school every day for 180 days. That's the length of a school year in the state of Washington, and just see what happens. So if you did that over the course of a 30 or 40-year career and all the different roles you have, it'd be pretty impressive, pretty crazy to see all the different things that happen in the day of a principal, in the day of the life of a principal. Schools are pretty interesting places, and so that'd be something really to marvel at. And he's actually not the first person that has encouraged me to do that. I haven't done it because it all comes down to time. Not a lot of time to do stuff like that, but it would be really interesting. I'll have to consider it. Dr. Seaman's book recommendation, he said the Alexander Hawk series by Ted Bell. I love these kind of fiction novels, and so I'll have to get my hands on one pretty soon here. So thank you, Dr. Seaman, for your time, your advice, and your support, and I look forward to continuing to work with you through AWSP. Thanks for listening, everyone. Please rate and review this episode on whatever platform you use to listen to it. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Who in your network do you know that could benefit from the message from today? Please share this with them. If you want to talk more about this topic or any others I've talked about in the past, reach out to me through LinkedIn. You can find me, Nick Davies, PhD. We see each other again next week. Thanks.